My name is Anthony Spiteri, Senior Global Technologist at Veeam Software. I'm just going to quickly go through our latest Veeam Backup Replication release v11. I'm going to talk about the cloudy features that we released in that product. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the cloud features. I'm going to talk specifically around VMware Cloud Director, Scale-Out Backup Repository, and then do a little bit about the RESTful API and the new PowerShell module. Just quickly, just to start with, since v11 was released to GA less than a month ago on the 24th of February, we've had 32,000 unique downloads of Veeam Backup Replication since GA. So it's a really big feather in our cap, right? That's a huge number. It's representative of that customer number that David showed earlier, that 400,000. Cloud features. So I have been calling this a cloud release and a VCSP release, so the VMware Cloud Service Provider release, built for our cloud and service providers. When we're building features and functionality, we are thinking about what we can build to enable our cloud providers to offer services to their own customers. And, I guess we've had conversations and there's been some questions around the fact as to why Veeam doesn't have software as a service just yet. This is the reason why. Our cloud providers are very strong, and because we're still building strong technology, strong features and enhancements that are cloud ready and that can be leveraged by our providers to offer to their customers, right? But even just to normal customers, if we look at some of these features, they can leverage the power of the cloud. So as we go down the list here, the VMware Cloud Director supportability, I'll talk a little bit about that later on. I kind of consider the CDP functionality a cloud play, because obviously it does do, site-to-site continuous data protection at low RPO, and I've talked about that on previous cloud field days, the CDP, and it's a really big feature of v11. The Scale-Out Backup Repository introduced support for Google Cloud and another tier, and I'll talk about that a little bit later on. We've added some ability for consumption reporting. One of the big things is obviously when you put stuff in the cloud, you want to be able to bill against it. So we've added a lot of features and functionality and spent time to be able to have our customers and our providers bill against that sort of stuff. We've added a new standalone RESTful API and a new PowerShell module, which I'll dive into a little bit. And then finishing off some enhancements. Obviously, you've seen the support plugin for Azure and a lot around Linux as well. Now, I consider the Linux stuff that we've done cloudy at the same time, because it just enables, you guys and our customers to be able to do more with cloud-based workloads. But yeah, let's get into the VMware Cloud Director stuff. The big thing that we've released is VMware Cloud Director site-to-site replication. This is a big one that our customers have wanted, our providers have wanted for a long time. So basically the ability to replicate between vCloud Director instances, or in fact replicate within vCloud Director itself. We also introduced our own native VMware Cloud Director plugin. So the native plugin, which is the HTML plugin, based on our own plugin or our self-service portal that we released in version 7, actually, one of the first to market portals to support self-service backup for VMware Cloud Director. We've now basically brought that into the modern UI for Cloud Director, which is really exciting. We also introduced 10.2 support. We have supportability for Cloud Director service on VMC, so very important there, and some other little things which our customers have wanted for a while. So they enable the ability to do multiple VCDs, extended RBAC as well. So, for you guys that have been working around cloud providers that know about VMware Cloud Director, of which I know a few of you do, you understand why these particular features and functionalities are important. And then also integrated and automated them, into the RESTful API as well, with the actual console itself, the service provider console that I showed in the previous session. They both work together to basically deliver a lot more value to our providers for the managed services. In terms of the Scale-Out Backup Repository, one interesting point to talk about the Scale-Out Backup Repository, and I've spent a couple of tech field days and cloud field days talking about this, but effectively we've now got to the point where we've released 25 Veeam-ready object storage solutions. So it's not only about the public cloud, it's about other solutions, Cloudian, all those other ones that are on premises, Ceph, everything that's native, open source. We support a lot of them. So a lot of those ready solutions are up to 25. Now, what's really interesting is that in 2020, we actually pushed up, or our customers pushed up through the object storage technology, almost 230 petabytes worth of data. Okay. Now, in terms of just stacking those CDs, top to bottom, about 400 kilometers worth of CDs, almost up to the International Space Station of data. So we're pumping so much information into the public clouds through our customer base, but also through the technology that we've actually enabled our customers to do. So there's a real thirst to get things into the cloud. And how we're doing this, for a very, very quick overview, is that what we do have in the Scarlet Backup repository is a concept of tiers now, or extents. Now, initially, the Scarlet Backup repository, as it was released, only had what we call the local repository, or what we're now calling the performance tier, and that's backed by anything. That's a direct area attached storage, that's a NAS, that's an iSCSI, whatever it might be. What we released in version 9.5 was the capacity tier, and that had the ability to send the data, to move it and copy it to Amazon S3 or Azure Blob as well. Now in version 11, what we did is we've added another tier. So now we've got 3 tiers: performance tier, the capacity tier, and the archive tier. Now the archive tier is all about pushing data to long-term storage that's really cheap. You almost never ever have to touch it. But if you do, there's obviously some caveats with that, right? So now what we're saying, from a policy-driven approach, what we can do is do performance tier for that local landing zone. We can do the capacity tier, which is basically that middle, less 30 to 90 days sort of thing. But as data grows and is getting bigger and the requirements to store more data gets more and more prevalent, we understand that we want to push data to a cheaper storage to store longer, almost forever. And that's where the archive tier comes into play. In terms of RESTful APIs, this is a really big one for us. It's all about the modernization of the API. We, had an API that was born in the mid 2010s. So obviously it wasn't sort of modern. It was lacking certain features. So we decided to rewrite and redo this almost from scratch in V11. So now we've got one which is based on OpenAPI 3. There's a Swagger interface. We can pull JSON, do some JSON stuff with it. Obviously, that's pretty important these days over XML. That's kind of is the format that most people want to be consuming APIs with and getting their information out and putting it back into the methods. We have a Swagger interface, but more importantly, this is now a separate service that's installed by default. So it's not tied to our enterprise manager. So there's not as much confusion around licensing and whatnot. So a very important step for us. There's quite a few methods that are in place to do stuff with the APIs now. So again, the one thing that I can say here is a bit of an exclusive, is that we are working on a community sort of unofficial Terraform provider based on this initial API set. So that will make Ned happy, no doubt. So stay tuned on that one. That's really exciting to be part of that process. In terms of the PowerShell module, so we were able to do a new PowerShell module because we didn't have one before. We had a snap-in. Now, Microsoft were depreciating snap-in, so we had to work really quickly to make sure that we had a PowerShell module. Now, the one caveat of this module is that it's not a standalone, so you can't go to the PowerShell website and basically download it. You can't add the module remotely just yet. It's still tied to a Veeam install as such. Now, as we move forward into our next couple of updates and patch releases, we may be able to release this as a standalone module, which is what everyone wants. Suffice to say, though, we're about 80% there in terms of this particular version. So we actually added 84 new commandlets as well for new functionalities and existing expansions. So PowerShell is still very big in terms of how our customers and our partners do a lot of automation work with Veeam. Just to kind of wrap up, this is a great slide because I think it encapsulates a lot about what David started to talk about with regards to our journey, what Andrew showed with regards to the single platform, how we can basically take backups that were taken in Azure, taken in Google, taken in AWS. As long as we bring them into the Veeam backup format, they become intrinsically portable and mobile. And that's something that's really important from Veeam's perspective, because I do know, there's other claims out there, other companies will claim to do this, but there's no doubt that we do it in such a way that makes it easy with the least amount of friction and the easiest way to get a workload from A to B. Okay, there's a reason why the portable data format has been built in a certain way. It is so that when a backup gets into the repository, it can then be recovered and restored anywhere. And that's fundamental to what we're doing, right? Also, what you'll see here is an expansion of platforms. We won't stop that. So, we're expanding SaaS. We've added, Office 365. We've touched on that in the last sort of tech field days and cloud field days. We continue to extend functionality around that. We're adding supportability for the Mac agent, so for workloads that are living still in a physical location, for endpoints. And again, those workloads that are protected by the agents could be protected on public clouds as well. Nothing stopping you from doing that. But obviously you want to be doing things as natively and as agentless as possible where you can. That's where those products come into play. We haven't lost sight though of the fact that VMware and the virtualization space is still the bread and butter. That's not changing anytime soon. But you would have heard about the Kubernetes acquisition with Kasten. David talked about that. I think we can look forward to the next Cloud Field Day where Kasten are going to feature on that. So that's pretty cool. But also, just wrapping it all up, it starts with backup for us. That hasn't changed. Fundamentally, Veeam is all about the backup solution first. Okay, a lot of other providers want to talk about, as a service offerings, doing this and that. Big data, they want to talk about data lakes, they want to talk about remediation of ransomware. We're so focused on making sure that the backup is right, which is fundamental to what you guys do, because you can't do the recovery, you can't do the fancy stuff until you get the backup right. And I think Veeam's proven that over the past 10 to 12 years that we really release reliable software to make sure the backup is correct. Just finishing on V11 again, like David said, continuous data protection, we've talked about that. Hardened Linux repository, archive to cloud, expanded instant recovery. If you want to find out about all this stuff, here's a few QR codes for you. We'll have a good QR code here at Veeam. So the VBR, so the V11 launch rewind, so that's the one where you can go and see everything about Veeam Backup Replication, the launch that happened on the 24th of February. Another point out that we've got the Community Edition, which is that free edition for up to 10 instances. It's actually important to note that we have that almost across our whole product set, Office 365. There's some VBR and console blogs on my own website there. The big one that I wanted to point out, though, is we've got an exclusive offer. So at the moment, we're basically giving away 25 workloads for 6 months, plus a $250 credit for Veeam Backup for AWS and for Azure. So that's 25 workloads for free for 6 months. So for those listening out there, it's worthwhile jumping on that as well. So at service providers, I mean, sometimes the issue is that customers want complete separation of data, not only data, but also the backup path in terms of networking. So how does your solution actually provide that, or what the architecture looks like when such is a requirement for the cloud service provider? Yeah, so I talked about the Cloud Connect being central to that. So the Cloud Connect service that's central to everything that we're doing there effectively creates a tunnel between the sites. So you don't need to have any specific direct connection or any specific VPN set up. As long as you have the connection between the VBR server and the cloud or service provider site, you're going to get connectivity through. So that's the mechanism that does all the work. That's the mechanism that does all the communication back and forth.